And one of the big reasons that the Australian Energy Market Operator was underlining the need to keep this Eraring power station in the mix for quite a few years to come is that as a byproduct of producing electricity through coal-fired generation, you have big spinning wheels driven by steam. These are thousands of tonnes worth of equipment running at 3,000 revolutions a minute. Now, when you unplug that and you plug in a wind and solar dependent system, you don't get the same services. They cannot stabilise the grid. So you have to buy those services in. So that's an additional cost. Unfortunately, at the moment, the equipment that is needed to try and buy those services, well, it's just very, very hard to get. It's taking a lot longer than Transgrid imagined. And even when it's put in place, it won't provide exactly the same kind of services. So as I say again, there are costs to what we're doing. Many of them are measured in dollars and others of them are measured in reliability.
One of the other points you wrote about at the weekend, I just want to get you to elaborate on this for our viewers because it's an interesting concept that I put to the Industry Minister yesterday, in fact, about the prospect of renewable energy drought, essentially. AEMO has modelled for this sort of scenario where there are extended periods of low wind and low sun.
Yeah, so they did that modelling last year, right? And so they found the worst possible day. So now never forget this, the fuel that we are talking about comes from the weather. It is there when it decides to be there, not when you want it. And particularly when we get to winter, when we have the dark days of winter and they can be quite still. So what AEMO did was it did a model. It's all it can do about the future. It took the worst day of wind generation that it had ever seen at 14% of total generation that was available. And it actually did that over 8 days. It said, this is what we reckon is going to be the worst case scenario. Can we survive that? Well, they barely managed it. They had every gas supply going. They were burning diesel and kerosene in their own modelling to keep the lights on. But at exactly the time they brought that modelling out, we had a worst case scenario in the real world weather. So the story that I did was simply saying that while the model was saying this, the real world has now already delivered a much worse scenario than AEMO says is going to be necessary. So in order to cover that gap in future now, you're going to need more backup of some kind. Either you're going to need more gas, you're going to have to spread out more wind and solar. But by the way, if you put more wind and solar in exactly the same part of the world, you still get no fuel. This is the point. Yeah. When the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, you cannot direct this power.
So, yeah, you might have the transmission infrastructure, but not the generation because of the lack of source. That's essentially the point. And I guess the thing that I put to Tim Ayres yesterday, Chris Uhlmann, was what are the implications of such a drought or, you know, however you want to describe it, an extended period of low supply? What are the implications for AI and the data centres?
Yeah, well, and I heard Andrew Charlton talk about this morning. Of course, we should be aiming to try and get artificial intelligence, but you should always ask this question when people say that Microsoft or somebody has signed up to an agreement where there's going to be wind, solar and batteries that are going to be running a data centre, and these are huge consumers of power. So, you know, some of them taking 1 gigawatts worth of power. Now, think about this. Adelaide runs on 3 at peak demand. So you're talking about 1/3 of the generation of a city like Adelaide in a single data centre. So where does the power come from? Well, it needs 24/7 power. Can't get that from wind, solar and batteries. The thing is too that batteries are not an energy source. You need to be able to fill the batteries. And if they run out, you need to have something to go to. At the back of all of these, and you investigate every single one, Kieran, at the back of all of them, you'll find there's a line that leads off somewhere that says gas, diesel or coal. That's where they'll get the power from when they want to run them 24/7.
On finally the international stage, a key moment, some optimism around it, but it's not the first time when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war. Should we have any more hope here that Putin might actually come to the table for once?
I have very little hope that he will. We know that right now, in fact, that Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, and Steve Witkoff, his major negotiator, are in Moscow talking to Putin as we speak, as I understand it. At a brief, wander around Red Square before going in to speak to him. And I don't think that Putin has any intention of ending this war except on the most punitive of terms for Ukraine, which are terms that Ukraine and Europe will not accept. yet. So I don't hold out a lot of optimism that he's likely to settle this. He's using the old Russian playbook, which is, we will wear you out. Look at every war that Russia has fought, Kieran, is what do they do in the long run? They are prepared to throw bodies and time at this, and I don't think this is going to be any different.